Now there are some inbuilt helper functions to edit strings. So suppose we are writing some documentation and we want to convert a string literal into a title. To do that, we can use the inbuilt method called title. So here I'm declaring a new string, welcome to CS6005, and I want to convert this into a title. So I'm simply calling the title method uh, that is part of this string class. Now notice here, first let's maybe stop this and then check what is the type of message. String in Python is string is a class in Python, so message should be an object of type string. So again, message is of type class, message is of type string, so it's an instance or an object of type string, which is a class. So remember again, in C++ when we saw classes, we saw that we can call the member functions of a class using the dot operator. So simply we create objects, then we use the dot operator to call an inbuilt member function of the class. So here title is a member function of this class string. So when I call title, what it does is it will convert each word in our string literal, the beginning, the first character of each word to uppercase. So now welcome, in welcome W is lowercase, so it should be flipped to uppercase. Similarly, T will be uppercase in 2. Now CS has uppercase C, but it also has uppercase S. So it should convert capital S to small s, and 6005 will be left as is. So let's run this one line. And now notice, welcome to CS6005 is displayed with W capital, T capital, and S in lowercase. Now suppose we want all the characters to be lowercase, we can simply use the method lower. So this should display all our characters in our string literal using lowercase. Similarly, if we use the inbuilt method upper, all the characters in our string should be displayed using uppercase or all capitals. Now we can also use the replace method to replace a group of strings. Previously we saw how to replace a single character. Now suppose we want to replace this welcome message to welcome the mechanical engineering students, we can simply write welcome, replace CS6005 with ME6250. This should now display welcome to ME6250. Okay. Next, let's look at some string manipulation methods that will help us to work with white spaces in our string literals. So there are scenarios where we will want to remove these white spaces. When we accept inputs from the user, when we accept a sequence of numbers as inputs from the user, we will see the use of these inbuilt methods. For now, let's just understand what they are doing. So suppose I have a new string white space underscore string, and it's initialized with a white space in the beginning, hey, and then a white space at the end. Now if I want to remove the white space on the left hand side or the beginning, I can use the inbuilt method lstrip. This will strip the white space at the beginning. Similarly, I can use rstrip to remove the white space at the end. So this will remove the white space at the end and leaves the white space as is at the beginning. Or I can simply use strip to remove the white space at both beginning and at the end. So let's execute them line by line. We will not see the white space on the terminal. So here, even though we don't see any white space after hey, there is a white space on the right hand side. The next one should be clear. We should see the white space at the beginning and then hey, so that should be clear. And the last one should remove white space on both left and right. We will come back to these strip methods, so it's useful to remember lstrip, rstrip, and strip. Next, let's see how to use the inbuilt method starts with and ends with. When we're working with files, we will use ends with usually to check the extension of the file name. Here I'm declaring a variable called URL and initializing it with www.cs.utah.edu. Now I want to check whether this particular URL begins with HTTPS. To check whether it begins with HTTPS, I can use the inbuilt method starts with. If it begins with HTTPS, this method will return a true, otherwise it returns a false. Similarly, I can use the method ends with to check whether this particular string ends with .edu. So let's run this particular line. Notice, since it begins with HTTPS, it returns a true. Similarly, since it ends with .edu, it should again return a true. Now we can stop the program and change this to .com and change this to HTTP. And now let's check what's the answer. Notice again that since HTTPS and both HTTP are part of this beginning of the string, this should still return a true. However, this does not end with .com, so this should return a false. The second one should be a false. The first one is true and the second one is false. Okay. Next, let's check whether we saw this in the previous class. We can use the in keyword to also search whether a particular substring is part of our string or not. Here I don't care whether edu is at the beginning or at the end. All I want to know is whether .edu is part of my string. If it is part of URL, we will see a true, otherwise we should see a false. Notice, since .edu is part of our URL, we see a true. However, if I make this edus, we should get a false. That is, it doesn't look for a substring, even though .edu is part of URL. .edus is not part of URL. So it searches for the whole string that we provide and then looks for .edus. Since .edus is not part of the URL, we get a false. Okay. Next, let's see how to use the find method. So far we saw how to check whether a substring begins at the beginning or whether a substring is at the end of our string, or whether a substring is part of our string or not. Now, if you want to know where the substring occurs, we can use the find method. So here I'm using find to find the position at which .edu is part of our URL. So url.find in parentheses the string literal.edu will give us the position at which .edu begins. So this should print 19, and now when I print URL of 19 colon, what this is doing, as we saw previously, this will slice our string. The slice begins at 19 and goes up to end of string. So this should show .edu on the terminal. Okay, so the next line is simply using, instead of 19, url.find to find the correct position, and then it's slicing till the end of the string. So this should again show .edu. Let's simply restart this. And notice now the next statement should also print .edu. So if you want to, if you're searching for a particular substring in your string, you can use the find method and use string slicing to access that particular substring. Now in C++, we saw there were some helper functions to check whether a string contains only alphabets or whether a string contains only digits. These were part of the CC type module. Now in Python, we have similar functions. So here I'm creating a new variable called file name and initializing it with basics.py. And now I want to check whether file name has only alphabets. The choices are true or false. So let's look at the answer and then try to reason it. Notice the answer is false. Now the reason why it is false is because our string literal contains a punctuation. So we have a full stop, which is a punctuation, and therefore file name does not contain only alphabets. However, if I use slicing to only check whether basics has only alphabets, then that should return a true. So file name of :-3 should now print basics, and now when we call is alpha on basics, that should return a true, since basics only contain alphabets. Okay. Now similarly, I'm creating a new variable called number, initializing it with 1, 2, 3, and now we can use this inbuilt method isDigit to check whether there are only digits in this particular string. Notice this again returns a true. So suppose I can stop this program now and change this to have some punctuation, and now this time this method should return a false. So you can use isAlpha to check whether the string contains only alphabets. You can use isDigit to check whether the string contains only digits. Now finally we will see some string formatting examples. So in Python we can create a string literal with placeholders. So notice here I've created a string literal which is mix with open and closed braces and a couple more open and closed braces to make an ideal omelette. These open and closed braces or pair of braces are placeholders, and we will use the format method to fill these placeholders. So the format method we are passing 3 arguments. There are 3 placeholders on the left hand side, and therefore we are passing 3 arguments. The first argument will be the first placeholder will be filled using the first argument. The second placeholder will be filled using the second argument, and the third placeholder will be filled using the third argument. So now when I execute this line, we should see mix 2x, 30 grams of milk and a pinch of salt to make an ideal omelette. So it's useful to create placeholders in our string literals and fill it using variables. You don't need to pass string literals. You can actually pass any variables. Format is a function, so think of these parameters as arguments that are passed to a function. Now suppose I want to fill these placeholders in a different order. So notice here I'm passing 2 arguments to the format function. I have 2 placeholders. I can use indices to mention which argument should be used to fill which placeholder. Here I want to fill the first placeholder using the 0th parameter or the first argument, and the second placeholder using the first parameter or the second argument. So the first argument has index 0, the second argument has index 1. In the second case, I want to fill the first placeholder using the second argument and the second placeholder using the first argument. So we can use indices to change the order in which we want to fill these placeholders. So first let's execute the first line, and notice we see Strangers in the Night by Frank Sinatra. Now when I execute the next line, we should see Night in the Strangers by Frank Sinatra. So we can fill the placeholders in the order that we want by using indices. If we don't if the braces has no index, if it's empty, then it will simply fill the first placeholder using the first argument, second placeholder using the second argument, and so on and so forth. Now we can also create keywords when we are passing arguments or parameters to this format method, and use these keywords to fill the placeholders. So here I'm creating 3 keywords: film, adjective, and theater. And the first placeholder is filled using film, second placeholder is filled using theater, third placeholder is filled using adjective. Notice the order is different here: film, adjective, theater, and I'm filling it with film, theater, and adjective. Again, this should print the Lord of the Rings at BFI IMAX was incredible. So we can use keywords to fill the placeholders. And I think this is the most useful way of using the format function to fill a placeholder. This makes the code more readable, and we will also be able to fill a particular placeholder programmatically. Now we can also use this format function to format numbers. So here, the first example shows us how to format pi. I want to display 3.14159 followed by whatever is the decimal digits, but only up to 5 decimal digits. So first let's correct this. First let's change this to 5. And now let's first print and then go back to the syntax. Notice now we see 3.14159, which is pi, and there are only 5 digits after the decimal point. So we can control how many digits we want to display using the string formatting. So we are passing pi as an argument to format method. Again, braces create a placeholder. Within this placeholder, we will substitute pi. And the format here says that we want to only display 5 digits after the decimal point. Now, if we want to display more digits or less digits, we can simply edit this number. So if I want to display 8 digits after the decimal point, I can make it 8. And now we have 8 digits after the decimal point. Now, in the next example, I'm showing you how to display number 15 in 3 different ways. Here, we are only passing one single parameter to the format method, and therefore the index is 0 in all 3 cases. So what this says is that we will fill all 3 placeholders using the same parameter 15. However, the format is different. The first placeholder will display the number in decimal. The second placeholder will display the number using hexadecimal number system. The third placeholder will display this number using binary number system. So let's execute this. Notice 15 in first 15 is displayed in decimal, then 15 is displayed in hexadecimal, which is F, and finally 15 in binary is 1111. Now the next example simply shows how to pass 3 arguments and use the index 0, 1, 2 to fill the 3 different placeholders. So the first placeholder will show 2 in decimal, so the output should be 2. Second placeholder will show the first parameter in hexadecimal. Since 4 in hexadecimal is 4, we should still see 4. The last one should show the last parameter, which is 8 in binary, which is 1000. So now when I continue, the last line prints 2, 4, and 1000. So we can use that format method to format both strings and numbers. We create new placeholders using braces. So an opening and closing brace creates a new placeholder. If the placeholder is empty, we will simply replace it with the corresponding parameter that's passed in the right order. If we want to fill the placeholder using a specific order, we can either use keywords or indices to fill the placeholder. So this completes dropping out strings. Next time we will begin with lists. We will also see dictionary, tuples, and sets. These are the data structures that we will be using in the Python programs. Once we complete these basic building blocks, we can then start looking at simple programs that will use some of these basic concepts. Thank you.